From opposite sides of the world, two near-identical legends. Tales of a giant creature, half man, half ape. In Nepal, they call it the Yeti.
You're convinced that these are the prints of a Yeti?
In North America, the Sasquatch.
He's an ancient creature that has existed here on Earth for a long time.
As new theories challenge conventional scientific wisdom, one man sets out to find hard evidence. This is the hunt for the Abominable Snowman. Is an explorer. He spent much of the last 3 decades traveling, trekking and climbing in the high Himalaya. He summited Everest twice. As one of the world's leading kayakers, he became the first person to navigate all 3 mighty rivers in this region. And he's lived among its people, the Sherpa. He's heard the tales that they tell of the Yeti.
I believe in the Yeti.
The Yeti isn't just an animal, it's also a god.
And over the years, he's begun to wonder, could there be any truth behind the myth? Only Westerners call it the Abominable Snowman. That name was dreamt up in the 1920s, when the first teams returned from surveying Mount Everest and said they'd seen something in a high mountain pass. Since then, there have been many others. Climbers say they've seen figures, heard noises, found tracks where they should have found nothing. The stories are remarkable, but for Jerry, what makes them really strange is that he also hears them told somewhere else. And that's thousands of miles away, where he lives and trains for half the year, in the great wildernesses of the western United States.
I want to know why I can hear what sounds like the same tall tale being told on the slopes of Mount Everest, or in my own backyard.
At that point, I saw a large bipedal creature come out of the trees and hurriedly scamper across.
It wasn't a person. It wasn't a bear. It didn't get down and crawl on all fours or whatever. It was what it was. I thought for a long time how it could have been something else, and I never could convince myself it was anything but what it was.
There are dozens of such reports every year. One of the most recent and intriguing came in August 2010, when a forest protection officer was called to a remote site in the Bridger Teton Mountains of Wyoming. A resident reported that an unidentified creature had been prowling around his cabin.
There were tracks in the mud, and they were tracks only that I've seen on television.
So how big were the tracks?
Well, the biggest one we found measured just over 15 inches.
These are the prints which convinced Ken and Cindy Avinon. The largest measures 38 centimeters, and they were up to 1.5 meters apart, suggesting a creature with a massive stride.
Are you an easy guy to fool?
I wouldn't think so. I've never seen or heard anything that I couldn't explain away. I'm definitely
He's very
skeptical.
He was a law enforcement officer in Florida for 30 years, so he's extremely skeptical, and it's a show-me thing with him. If he can't see it or have definite proof it doesn't exist.
I can't explain this away.
Every time I hear someone talk like that, it gets harder to dismiss. I've heard that there's one small part of the scientific community that takes these reports very seriously.
Dr. Jeff Meldrum is an anatomist and evolutionary biologist. He's catalogued more than 200 footprints, which he says are unexplained or unidentified.
More often than not, the subject is considered tabloid or merely pseudoscience.
The prints come from all over the world. Some of them date back more than 40 years. Some appear to belong to creatures which, if they had human proportions, would be nearly 2.5 meters tall.
For me, it seems that we're dealing with relic populations of man-like primates, literally dotting the globe.
Jerry's come to hear it for himself.
So I'm just starting to listen to the stories of the Sasquatch, and what they seem to echo is the same stories I hear all the way over in Nepal. And what I'm wondering is, how does that work?
It may well be that these are two parts of the same story. And as the local human populations interact with these creatures, they have similar experiences, and their oral traditions begin to converge.
If they're out there, why don't we have definitive proof?
We have to first acknowledge that mammals generally are rather elusive animals.
Descriptions of the Yeti and Sasquatch have often likened them to oversized upright gorillas. And even in the early part of the last century, the mountain gorilla wasn't formally recognized by science. It's very rare and hard to track. Meldrum argues that the populations of his undiscovered primates would be even smaller and even better at remaining hidden. They have evolved to stay out of our way.
This creature, it's the most elusive type of mammal. It's solitary. It's probably nocturnal. It's far-ranging in its habits. Those make that type of an animal extremely difficult to observe, let alone to capture.
Jeff Meldrum doesn't call himself a believer. His argument is that he sees enough evidence to demand a proper investigation. That's something few scientists seem prepared to do. There's another group of people here who aren't interested in showing that this creature exists, although their reasons are probably very different. They're the Shoshone people, and they seem to have no doubt that it's out there. Reba, nice of you to make time for me. Please sit.
Reba Terran is a member of the Shoshone tribe.
The Shoshone name is Bia Numbi, or Bia Nump.
Bia Nump. And what does Bia Nump mean?
Bia means big, and Nump, or Numbi, means foot or feet. He's an ancient creature that has existed here on Earth for a long time. And he knows our mountains inside and out.
When it comes to the most difficult question, why has the Bigfoot never been caught? The tribal people have their own answer.
They call it shape-shifting. I believe Bigfoot does have that power. And I can see him turning into a small animal where he would not be seen from being a big giant creature, and then they can't find him, when they have him trapped.
Now, I don't know much about the Snowman yet, but what Reba says about the creature's magical ability to get away, I know that's something that the Nepalis say about the Yeti. The stories seem very similar. And given they're ancient and from opposite sides of the world, that's kind of hard to explain. Now there's a way of thinking that says that cultures all over the world have these kinds of myths. They just do. But I'm intrigued. So here's what I think. I think the easy argument The one that says if one of these creatures did exist, we'd all be bound to know about it. Well, that doesn't work for me anymore. I'm going to go back to Nepal. I'm going to pursue this. I'm going to find out what the local people really believe. I'm going to see what physical evidence there is for the Yeti. I'm going to hunt the abominable snowman.
Into Lukla, the Tenzing Hillary Airport, named for the men who first climbed Everest, and generally agreed to be one of the most dangerous airports on Earth. It sits at a little over 2,700 meters.
Landing here is always a big moment. High altitude, touchdown, baby. Short runway. You get off the plane and you're right in the middle of the Himalaya. And you know, from that point on, you're on foot.
Means walking along paths cut centuries ago by the Sherpa people.
I don't know how many loads you think.
We've got to work that out, but let's separate the stuff first between camera gear and personal equipment.
Here's two more.
Yeah, give me that.
So how many porters do you think we're going to need?
We've got to work that out, but we'll be using a mixture of yaks and porters, so we'll figure that out now.
Sounds good. This one's heavy. This is Dao Sherpa. We first met several years ago, Camp 1 on Mount Everest. There's nobody I'd rather work with.
Carrying half a ton of gear through this terrain with no vehicles, no roads even, is going to be a challenge all of its own. They're already at a much higher altitude than the sites of the Bigfoot sightings in the States. But the terrain is still dense with lush vegetation, enough to give food and cover to even the largest animal. After 30 years of trekking, Jerry knows this land as well as anyone. Every step takes them higher and into thinner air. They need to reach a point where they can stop and acclimatize. They also need to find out what the local people know about the snowman.
Hey! This is Namche Bazaar, capital of the Sherpa community and also the major trading hub of the Everest region. The Nepalis will walk 10 days from the Indian subcontinent all the way up the Dudkosi River Valley. The Tibetans will come over the Nangpala Pass. They trade almost everything imaginable, including stories. the surface and you'll find that the Sherpa are seriously superstitious. They never want to be out after dark. They keep their doors and their windows small so that the living dead can't climb in. And when darkness does come, they bring their dogs and their livestock inside. The Sherpa have lived here for 500 years, passing their traditions down the generations.
Come, Jerry. Jerry, this is my Uncle Pemba.
Pleased to meet you. Here in the ancestral home of Dawa's family, I get to hear firsthand what they believe to be the truth about the Yeti.
We believe that even if you hear, for example, the noise of a Yeti, it can actually cause you harm. And that a Yeti can very quickly manifest itself and disappear again. So the Yeti is more than just a natural creature, it's a bit of a supernatural creature.
I'm wondering who can tell me what the Yeti, or as we like to call him, the Abominable Snowman, looks like.
Back in 1961, my grandfather went to the United States and he went to Harlem Zoo. And apparently it was the most exciting thing he ever did, because he saw all sorts of animals. Like the zebra was apparently one of his favorite, because he himself was a horse trader. But when he saw the gorilla, he got really excited and he said, "That's a Yeti, it's a Yeti." And years later, people would come to him with pictures of a bear, for example, a brown bear, which a lot of people think is what a Yeti is. And he would actually say, "I know what a bear is, but that's not a Yeti. A Yeti is like this," and he would point specifically at a picture of a gorilla. So I personally believe, and my family believes, that a Yeti is more of an ape-like creature than a bear-like creature.
Now, if the idea of a gorilla-like creature striding on two legs through the mountains of Nepal seems unbelievable, some people argue it's not impossible.
Today, there are no known apes in the region of the Himalayas, but in fact, we know that in the past there were. One of these, perhaps that captures our imagination more than any other, is Gigantopithecus. This was literally a giant ape.
A modern-day gorilla stands around 1.7 meters tall and weighs in at around 180 kilograms. When Gigantopithecus was walking the forests of Asia around 300,000 years ago, it stood up to 3 meters tall and weighed up to 540 kilograms. Does this explain the stories of a creature that is half ape and half man? Dawa's family offers one other clue to the nature of the Yeti. They have particular respect for the power of its roar.
Yeti धेरैजना मान्छेले यति देखेको पनि छ, तर यति चाहिँ हाम्रो बाजे बराजुले यो यति के हो भन्छ चित्ता. According to our grandfathers, our forefathers, when somebody heard a Yeti, their whole body just, they got the chills. And if you actually came across one, you would be completely paralyzed with fear. You could not do anything. So if it attacked you, you would just be completely paralyzed. That's what a Yeti would do to you.
Again, it sounds far-fetched, but there is a parallel amongst known primates. Ian Redmond has lived with great apes in the wild in Africa, and he's experienced it.
You've got an animal that is perhaps 3 times my weight, hurtling towards me, and just a huge black mass, and a vocalization which is
very, very loudly, much louder than that, as it hurtles towards you, and with the mouth open you see the big canine teeth, you see the red maw, and it's very, very frightening.
So the creature that the Sherpa describe in supernatural terms, an ape that walks on 2 feet and can strike terror with its screams, just might be explained scientifically. But Jerry's still seen no real sign that the Abominable Snowman is any more than a myth. The expedition team's now preparing to depart again. They've had to spend 24 hours in the town to ensure that they're properly acclimatized.
We use this time to make sure we're prepared. We got everything that we need to survive for a couple of weeks high in the Himalaya. We've got GPS, sat phone, incredibly powerful lenses, image intensifier. We got casting equipment should we find some kind of footprints. We got night vision goggles, and probably my favorite, a thermal imaging camera capable of registering the body heat of anything that moves out there. So from here, it gets kind of simple. People say they've got evidence, we go see it. We talk to the people who say they've actually encountered the Yeti. We follow information wherever it takes us. We keep an open mind, and we go as far and as remote as we need to go. This is the roof of the world. We're about 13,000 feet. It's about as high as human beings live year-round. The yak herders head up to higher pastures when the weather's good, but ultimately it's too cold, too barren, too brutal. Still, they say it's in this gap between the lowlands and the ice at 17,000 feet that the Yeti lives. And over there, obscured by cloud, is Mount Everest. The expedition's next goal is one of the region's ancient Buddhist monasteries. It holds what some people have said is the scalp of a Yeti.
In 1960, Sir Edmund Hillary, one of the first 2 people to climb Mount Everest, came back to the Everest region searching for the Yeti. He didn't find it, but what he did discover was there was a Yeti scalp in Kumjung village.
Dawa's grandfather was selected by the village elders to accompany the scalp on a world tour. He ended up showing it to JFK and the Queen of England.
That's the only time in over a century that the Yeti scalp has left Kumjung village.
But it wasn't just show and tell. Hair samples were taken from the scalp for microscopic analysis. The press at the time reported the general conclusion that the scalp was a clever fake, made using goat hair. But now, 50 years on, as Jerry and Dawa retread Hillary's footsteps, photographs made during that original analysis have been tracked down.
The Yeti scalp.
They give Redmond and Meldrum the chance to look at the evidence with fresh eyes.
The quality is quite extraordinary.
Oh, it is. It is.
And you can see this is a Kumjung skin, and a close-up of the hair, you can see that the scale pattern is very interesting. not unlike humans and apes, but also not unlike the sorrel, Himalayan goat.
Well, this is really amazing.
Viewed under a microscope, the surface of a hair isn't smooth, it's covered in scales. Sometimes the pattern and shape of these scales can be used to identify the species that the hair came from. The issue here is that the scale patterns on goat hair and ape hair are remarkably similar.
That's one of the challenges of hair identification.
And it turns out, even at the time, not everyone was convinced that this came from a goat.
What interests me, though, is that the lady who did these, that she disagrees. She's not convinced that this is goat. And of course, the only way we can really tell is if the monastery would allow a DNA sample.
Right.
Of course, science has also moved on in 50 years. DNA analysis of the supposed scalp might provide an answer, but it's proved a difficult business just getting in to see and film it. It's only through Dawa's personal connection that Jerry can get this far. Special access has to be negotiated with the head of the monastery. And for good reason. It's said that at least one other monastery in the area also held Yeti parts, but that over the years they've been taken by Westerners, either for scientific purposes or as souvenirs. That's why the Kunjung scalp is normally kept locked away.
The scalp has the same distinctive conical shape as the Sherpa described. It happens to match some descriptions of the Sasquatch. It could also fit with Jeff Meldrum's Gigantopithecus skull. But it isn't just a museum piece, it's a sacred object. So they're not going to let us take a sample of the scalp. I mean, why would they? We either confirm something they already know, or we dismiss something that they hold sacred. They got nothing to gain from that. And they don't really care what we think. They got faith. What really surprises me is just how deep the belief runs here. Just as some of the Native American tribes just accept the Sasquatch as a fact, the Snowman is more than a story that the Sherpa parents tell to their kids. You simply won't find anyone who doesn't think it's real. But by Western standards, we're left with nothing. No samples, no first-hand eyewitness reports. And although that might be good enough for the Sherpa, it's not good enough for me. I need hard evidence. I need proof.
In his hunt for the abominable snowman, Jerry Moffat is about to get his first break. A few days' walk from here, high up in the Majamo Valley, lives a woman called Lakpa Doma. She is said to be the victim of the most widely reported Yeti attack.
We gotta go see her.
She lives the life of a recluse now, but she's agreed to talk to Jerry.
The site of the supposed attack is at around 16,000 feet. That's quite a climb from here. And the higher we go, the tougher the terrain gets. This is the Machermo Valley. This is where, more than 30 years ago, Lakpadoma believed she was attacked by the Abominable Snowman. She was on her own up here with her yak herd. And this is the exact spot. Oh, Lakpa, your Yeti here?
I was thinking about my brother. He should have been there. Suddenly, the Yeti hit me from behind, like a hammer, and grabbed my neck. It lifted and dropped a cow. It gouged a wound in its side until the blood flowed. It sucked out all the blood. Then it took a baby cow and dropped it against a rock and drank its blood. The calf didn't die. The Yeti left.
Can you tell me what it looked like?
The teeth were big. It had a wrinkled face. The eyes were sunken deep. It walked like this, but very fast. The skin on the hands was cracked, and the nails were very long.
It's not pleasant to watch.
Ian Redmond has seen the damage that a primate attack can do.
I met one guy, an African in Rwanda, who had 4 parallel scars across his stomach, where he just narrowly avoided being disemboweled when the silverback swiped at him and just caught his belly with his fingernails. He was a poacher. Almost all situations where humans are hurt by wild primates are self-defense, or the primate is wanting some food or something that the human has. If you resist that, you might well get bitten.
To him, the detail of the incident that Lakpadoma describes is unlike anything he's ever heard a wild ape do.
The only primates I know of that drink blood deliberately as a special food are humans. Maasai, Samburu, keep cattle and deliberately bleed the cattle in order to partake of the blood. And the only primate that kills several large animals at the same time is a human primate that we know of.
But that doesn't mean we should write the story off.
If there is a close relative of the human primate that's lurking in the Himalayas or in the Pacific Northwest or in Colorado, then the fact that its behavior is more like human than gorilla or chimpanzee shouldn't greatly surprise us. The only surprise is that it's been living here all this time without us having a clear understanding of it being here.
Lakpa said the only way that she survived was by playing dead. I don't doubt her sincerity. Something happened to her. But I do remain skeptical. I have to.
The next move is going to be to take a good look at this area.
We're going to move further up the mountain and see what else is alive in this valley. There ain't no manual for Yeti hunting. Can't just look it up on the net. But here's what we're going to do. Dawa and I are going to site ourselves on opposite sides of the valley. We've got our night vision gear and the thermal imaging camera. We're going to use the one advantage that we might actually have over a creature that lives up here. Darkness.
As the wind tears through the Machermo Valley and the temperature drops, Jerry and Dawa start truly to understand just how tough this environment is. They take turns to monitor the output of the thermal imaging camera and to walk the freezing slopes.
Hey, I'm going to come out and meet you.
Copy.
Did you see anything over there?
No, I was looking down the valley. I couldn't see anything.
Oh, it's definitely kind of spooky out here.
They're now close to 5,000 meters. While the lower valleys teem with life, they see no signs of animal activity.
I don't know if anything could survive up in this neck of the woods with these extreme temperatures. Incredibly cold.
2 days and nights on the mountain is enough to confirm Jerry's feeling.
So that was a stunning place, but I got 2 major issues. One, and it's obvious, this region is vast. We could spend a long time blundering around in the dark looking for the abominable snowman. And 2, and this is much more important, I can't imagine anything living up there. There's no food, there's no shelter, it'd freeze to death.
Well, without a doubt, the moniker of Abominable Snowman is misleading, because if this is indeed a large-bodied ape, as I suspect, it doesn't inhabit the barren snowfields and glaciers of the higher elevations, but its tracks are simply seen there as it passes from one isolated mountain valley to another.
All the known great apes actually exist in tropical or subtropical forests. Meldrum's controversial belief is that the Yeti might have evolved to live in these much colder alpine forests. It's never been found by people hunting it in the high snowy passes, because up there, like the climbers, it's only ever passing through.
These places are also where the trekkers and mountaineers of the region are traveling, and hence that's where they find the footprints.
As Jerry and Dawa begin their descent empty-handed, everything changes. They get their second major break.
Wow, that is impressive. The contact of Dawa has heard about our expedition and come forward with something incredible. So Angtemba, you're convinced that these are the prints of a Yeti?
Oh yes, I believe. And this is my 3rd time which one I saw.
In 2008, he was climbing in the remote Makalu region when he saw these prints.
I think this is going up.
His photos take pride of place on his wall, but he's never shared them with the outside world until now. You know, it looks to me the way that this is positioned, that he obviously knows how to travel in the snow, because as we know from climbing, that's, you know, how you would traverse going up a fairly steep section of mountain. If he was coming down, he would be coming down like that, stomping his way in, but he's got that nice efficient motion. He knows how to travel in the snow line up there.
Over more than a century of mountaineering in the region, many people have come forward to say they've seen Yeti footprints. but only a handful have backed up their claims with photographs. Jerry returns, carrying with him what may be the most credible evidence of the Yeti's existence to emerge in a generation.
We're not chasing unicorns or mermaids. This feels more real. It feels real because I know these people. I trust them. And they know this country. Anyone who climbs in these mountains trusts the Sherpa people with their lives. So when they speak, I'm kind of honor-bound to listen.
Jerry came here chasing a myth. But is he now starting to see the truth behind it? Back in the US, back in Sasquatch country. When Jerry first set out, when he started listening to tales of the Yeti and Bigfoot, there was talk of a scat sample found next to some possible Bigfoot tracks. Jerry's come to find out what DNA analysis has shown up, and what Jeff Meldrum thinks of his Yeti prints. Footprints are Meldrum's area of expertise. He can read them to determine not only the species, but the height and the weight and the walk of the animal that left them. He's collected casts of prints from all over the world, more than 200 supposedly left by unidentified primates. He's come across some that he knows are hoaxes. Many he puts down to Sasquatch. A couple are from the Everest region. So what does he think of the photographs that Jerry took from Ann Tambo?
Dr. Meldrum, good to see you.
You too, likewise.
So, the prints we brought back from the Himalayas,
Yes.
are they evidence of our Yeti?
Well, I'm afraid I have to say most likely not.
Disappointing.
The tracks were made in fresh snow on a slope so high, barren and remote that the man who found them was sure they couldn't have been made by another person.
You are convinced that these are the prints of a Yeti?
Yeah, I'm sure I did.
He assumed it was a Yeti because he could see no other explanation. But Meldrum is equally sure that he's wrong. He sees the signs of a four-legged animal, a quadruped.
We were convinced it was a biped, from the traversing motion of the prints.
Let me show you how it might have come about here in the snow. As this quadruped takes a step with their forepaw, the corresponding hind paw comes in and may register to varying degrees with that track. What then gave the enlarged effect was the sunlight catches this edge and it melts away the snow on this down in the shady side, or the non-shady side, I should say. Shady side remains nice and sharp and crisp, and these are the exact features we see in the print. Then come the opposite side, slightly offset due to the straddle, with a forepaw and a hind paw following right behind, and then the melting process takes place, enlarging that apparent single footprint now, and that's repeated in an alternating right and left, giving the appearance of a bipedal trackway traversing the snowfield.
If Meldrum's right, there's only one animal capable of making these tracks in the snow at this altitude. The snow leopard. one of the rarest, most elusive creatures on Earth.
You gotta find this whole business incredibly frustrating.
Well, it is. It's frustrating.
It's frustrating for both sides of the debate. There's no hard proof that these creatures exist, and Meldrum acknowledges there's no way of showing that they don't.
If neither the Yeti nor the Sasquatch actually exist outside of the realm of folklore, then that's a real possibility we need to acknowledge. It's actually very difficult to demonstrate a negative.
But he and his colleagues are convinced that the proof will come one day.
It could happen just like that, with a hunter bringing one down or a semi hitting one on the highway. We're certainly not throwing in the towel with this result.
Jerry Moffat began all this by comparing two myths, two mere stories. But what he's seen has made him think there may be more to it than that. He's seen Meldrum's collection. He's seen what the Sherpa believe is hard physical evidence. A lot of that evidence is confused or conflicting. There are good arguments that these creatures are just legend. But most importantly, Jerry's talked to people thousands of kilometers apart. People with the utter conviction that their wild places hold a secret.
Hundreds of miles of wilderness that human beings have barely touched. The Everest region, even more remote. If anyone tried to tell me that they knew for certain there's nothing out there, well, that I couldn't believe.
Discover one of ancient history's biggest heists in the Egyptian job.